Welcome to Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk 1180 for the very best in Saturday Talk Radio at 1 o'clock and on 1230 KGEO at 10 o'clock on Saturday, and for the best in Wednesday Talk Radio on 1410 KERI on Wednesday at 1 o'clock. And Clay, as of 2 weeks ago, we are now in Albuquerque, New Mexico on 1100 KKIM. So, Clay, that was a great show last week with Ed Vailoff from the Tea Party and Lenora McLean, author of The Lemon Tree.
Different situations, wasn't it?
Yeah, totally different. Yeah, and interesting talking to Ed from the Tea Party about their concept on what happened in the election and everything.
But the best part of the whole show was at the end when you rambled.
You and I had a segment to just talk?
Yeah, we just jammed.
That was kind of fun. Actually, I enjoyed that.
It's like jamming in voice.
Yes. Since you and I can't sing, when I sing in the shower, the water stops. It's not a pretty sight. So it's.
Well, who do we have today, Marty?
Today we've got two great guests. We've got Doug Johnson, a repeat guest, author of No Problem. He's going to talk about the election. But in the first half, I heard about this book yesterday, and I could not wait to give this gentleman a call. I'm really, really excited about this. We've got Tom Fitzgerald on the line with us, talking about his new book, Poor Richard's Lament. Tom, welcome to Taking Care of Business.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
So you're out on the right coast, you said, huh?
Yes.
There was nothing.
It depends on whether you face north or south. So it gets very complicated.
Well, I was going to say there's nothing right about that coast.
No.
There's nothing right about this coast either.
It's very blue where I am. Yes.
Oh yeah. Well, we're also now in New Mexico, which is a blue state surrounded by a sea of red. So
yes.
I don't know how that one worked out.
The Red Sea.
The Red Sea. Yeah.
Well, we're in California. It's a bit blue also, isn't it?
Just a little. Well, we're Kern County. I think we're red in a sea of blues. So, but we're the last vestige of Orange County here in California.
You know what's interesting though is Kern County is the leading economic recovery place in the country.
Would you think it might have something to do with our conservative policies?
I think it might.
Gee, what do you think?
Maybe oil has something to do with it, too.
Well, oil and ag, but if they don't kill the ag by taking away our water, but that's a whole other subject. So, Tom, before we get into your book, which I'm really fascinated with the concept of, tell us a little bit about Tom Fitzpatrick. Or Fitzgerald,
well,
I'm sorry.
I grew up in a small little village called Cape Vincent in northern New York, right on the confluence of Lake Ontario and the St. Lawrence River. I had kind of a Huckleberry Fun Finn. Huckleberry Fun. That's a nice.
was he a friend of Huckleberry Finn's?
I had a Huckleberry Fun childhood, and it shaped me. I think it started the process of shaping me to write something like Poor Richard's Lament, which came toward the twilight of my career, let us say. I'm pushing 70.
Wait, Tom. Wait. We're not that far off age-wise. I don't like this twilight of your career bit. Come on.
Well, the light does dim a bit, I think.
Well, in Clay's case, the lights are on and nobody's home.
It's just about out in my case.
So I'm sorry. Go ahead. You had this Huckleberry Fund existence.
It was punctuated by two things. I think imagination and freedom. You could do anything you could imagine, and what you imagined, you had the freedom to do. So I think that those two factors really, really shaped me. I've had sort of an eclectic career because I'm primarily a writer, and writing doesn't really pay for itself except for a few, very select few.
Amen.
Yes, you have to have another life, another working life anyway. So I was a stockbroker. I sold courses door to door, home study courses. Got into technical writing, got into the corporate management, got into teaching, just on. And all of that was to support what I really like to do, and that's to write.
It sounds a little bit like Clay and I. Here we are, doing this, and we're both insurance brokers, so...
And I'm broker than most.
Yeah. So, and Tom, you were a UDT SEAL diver in Vietnam, and
yes, yeah,
yeah. I mean,
well, that's another way that my childhood shaped me. I could swim before I could walk, and I liked swimming long distances. So I swam very long distances before I went into the UDT SEAL program. So, and the St. Lawrence River is very cold water, so it's quite a bit north. And so I was prepared for the cold water off Coronado, where the training took place.
Yeah, I remember that. I was in the Marines, and I remember that training base over there in Coronado. And the water for you had to be a piece of cake. Yes, and it was interesting too, because the guys who balked up on weightlifting and didn't have an ounce of fat on them, they were the first to go because they simply couldn't tolerate the cold. Yeah, which makes sense.
Yes,
we're having a conversation with Tom Fitzgerald, author of Poor Richard's Lament.
I wanted to bring a little something up here for those that don't know. At UDT, I believe that's the Underwater Demolition Team.
Yes.
Yeah, Underwater Demolition Training.
Training.
Yep, is what it's called. But let's talk about your book. So you wrote a book called, you've actually written a couple of books, but this latest one, and I can't wait to get my hands on it. I guess Chuck sent me a copy yesterday. But it's called Poor Richard's Lament, which is, well, tell us what the story is behind Poor Richard's Lament.
It's roughly divided into two parts. And in the first part, Ben Franklin has been languishing in purgatory for 225 years since he died in 1790. And he's supposed to have been contemplating all his errata, his mistakes. Instead, he's added 12 more volumes to his autobiography. So he gets hauled in front of a celestial court to force the issue, and he's examined by three old arch enemies, including John Adams, who was just insanely jealous of Franklin. So in the examination, we learn all the dark side of Ben Franklin, which was a lot. There was a lot more of that than what we get from our history books. For instance, he participated in the slave trade. He ran ads in his Pennsylvania Gazette for sale of Negro slaves. One of the ads stands out for me. Is it was an ad for a mother and her two children. One of the children was a toddler, and the other was 4 or 5 years old. And the ad read, "Sale together or separately." So here's Ben running an ad in his paper that at least presented the possibility that these kids would be separated from their mother, never to be to be reunited again. And he was a terrible parent. He was a terrible father. Anyway, all this stuff comes out in the first part of the novel. At the end of this examination, Ben Franklin expects to be pushed into the fiery pit. Instead, he's invited to come back to our time to bear witness to what's become of his dear country. And he begins his odyssey of witness in Boston at Milk Street, where he was born. And he wends his way through Boston, and he has encounters with various characters. And then he makes his way to New York City, where he crashes a leadership conference, an international leadership conference at the Waldorf Astoria. Leadership is a theme in the novel. Anyway, he ends up in Philadelphia, and he wends his way through the University of Pennsylvania, which he founded. And he's on a Segway at this point. You know, a Segway, the powered scooter that was going to change the world, but didn't quite do it.
Oh, jeez.
And he ends up at his gravesite at Christ Church Burying Ground. So that's roughly the frame of the story.
You know, it's funny. I've been to his gravesite there, and it's on, as you know, it's on a sidewalk, next to a sidewalk, and
Yes.
there's that little wrought iron fence there.
Yes.
And any time of day you go there, there's hundreds of pennies on the grave.
Yes.
People,
Yes.
his famous saying, penny earned is a penny saved.
Yes.
And people throw their pennies on his gravesite.
Yes. Yeah, it's a big marble slab, and you're right, it's just covered with coinage.
Yeah. One of the things that was fascinating to me is that Walter, I think it's Isaacson, who did the really famous biography of Ben Franklin, endorsed your book, and he really liked the book.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, so
I think a lot of Franklin scholars are really taken with it, and I think it's because I spent 9 years on it,
Wow.
and I spent 9 years in order to get Ben right. It was a chore, because you almost have to, if you're going to put somebody in 640 pages and he's going to be front and center, it's got to be right, or it isn't going to work. I use the analogy of a wooden bell and a crystal bell. If it rings like a wooden bell, thunk, 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 it's a disaster. Forget it. But if you get it so it rings like a crystal bell, then you got it. And that's what I had in my mind whenever I was trying over again to get every scene right. The language had to be right. He then spoken 18th century diction, so I had to get that right. Mm-hmm. But I think it worked, and these Franklin scholars have confirmed it for me that by endorsing the book, they think that I was able to pull off what I needed to pull off.
Well, I can't wait to read it, and I've got a bunch of questions for you when we come back from the break. Okay, so we'll be back. We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180.